May the meditation of my heart and the words of my lips be pleasing unto you, O Lord. Amen. Please be seated. So is God trying to get your attention? Jesus tells us, pray always and don't lose heart. If we cry out to God, he will respond quickly. With all that is going on in the world and all the people who are crying out to God, waiting for a response, how does God respond to all that suffering? I believe that we are here to continue the work of Jesus, the work that he started here on earth. We are his hands and his feet, and we are to respond to suffering. Mother Teresa says, at the end of life, we will not be judged by how many diplomas we have received, how much money we have made, how many great things we've done. We will judge by, I was hungry and you gave me to eat. I was naked and you clothed me. I was homeless and you took me in. Hungry not for bread, but hungry for love. Naked not only for clothing, but naked for human dignity and respect. Homeless not only for want of a room of bricks, but homeless because of rejection. What gifts do you have that would help someone in need? I ask you to think about that today because after this service there will be a ministry fair in the hall. Is there a ministry that you're interested in, but you think, I couldn't do that? I would not be good enough. I don't have enough experience. Well, I'd like to point out that if someone's very good in the position you're interested in, they probably didn't have any experience when they started either. Some folks have been in the same ministry for decades. They may be growing weary of that ministry, and the position may benefit if someone else steps in. A change in ministry may allow someone to realize that they have other gifts in another ministry. Or perhaps you think it would take too much of your time to be involved in ministry. But you're in charge of the time it would take. You can set boundaries of what you are available to do and not to do. The intent of the ministry fair is not to pressure you into taking on a ministry that you're not gifted in or not interested in. It is not high-pressure sales. It's for information. It's for you to find out about the ministries that St. Lawrence is involved in and to determine if you have gifts that you could share. And you're encouraged to ask questions of those who are at the table about why are they involved? What are the joys of being involved? What are the challenges? What's required? And I suggest that you do visit tables that you have no interest in. You may be surprised that something may pique your interest. As a deacon, I am to encourage others to use their gifts for ministry. And I've been in different churches, and that often puts me in the position where I don't know people, and I don't know their gifts. So I've gone up to people that I don't know and suggested they be involved in the ministries, and others say, I didn't think they'd ever do that. And they loved it and they excelled at it, but no one had ever asked them to do it. So sometimes people feel that if they are wanted in a ministry, someone would come up to them and ask them. And I encourage you to get more information today and let someone know if that ministry interests you. You'd be supported with training. If needed, you would be mentored by someone already involved in the ministry. And your new ideas could bring new life to a ministry. And if you think you're not knowledgeable enough or strong enough, I ask you to think of Mother Teresa. She was born in Macedonia where girls are not permitted to go to school. So she was homeschooled with a little bit of English and math. And her youth group leader, who was a priest, taught her something about science and medicine and art. And at 18, she went to a convent, and then she went to Calcutta to work with lepers. She was not a brilliant scholar. She was not a doctor or a social worker or a politician. She simply helped the poor in India by loving them. And it sounds like a small thing, but it grew into a very big thing, and she opened schools and hospitals and orphanages. She was a simple woman who loved God and continued Jesus' work on earth by helping others. She simply used her gifts to love others. One of my favorite books is called Mama Maggie, and it's about a woman named Maggie Gobran, who was a college professor, and she quit her job to go and wash the feet of children who lived in the garbage dumps in Cairo. And the children's feet were cut and bruised and dirty, from digging through garbage piles to find food and items to sell so their families could survive. But washing their feet did more than clean their feet. Because while she washed her feet, she talked to them. She got to know their name, and she showed them that someone cared. She showed them love. She worked to get others involved to provide food for the children, and when they felt someone cared, they gained confidence. And she eventually worked to build schools for them, then helped them find jobs, and changed their lives and gave them a future. And once they were educated, some of them stayed there to help other children. She continued God's work on earth by using her gifts to love others. So if you are thinking, the church needs more help, for example, at the quality fair or the yard work, but it's really not your thing, then don't do it. If you are not working from a place of love or joy, don't do it. However, it might not be your joy that you focus on. You may feel called to do something that's a little awkward for you, something maybe you're not 100% comfortable in doing. But if things keep happening that seem to be pointing you towards a certain ministry, maybe God is tapping you on the shoulder. Maybe you will find joy in it, not because it's something you love to do, but you may learn to love it when you see the joy it produces for others. You may find that you are blessed in the ministry by the joy that the ministry brings to others. Talk to those who are involved in the ministry now and ask what motivates them to do what they do. I will be at the refugee sponsorship table, and when I think about why I'm involved in sponsoring refugees and how it brings me joy, I think of the last verse of Luke's Gospel today, when Jesus asks, "When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" And what immediately comes to mind for me is the faith that I see in refugees who have lost family members through extreme violence, who have lived in fear and poverty for years. Yet I can so easily see their faith as their speech is peppered with, "Thank God," or "God willing." I preached this summer about refugees and how there are now 100 million people in the world who have been displaced from their homes. So why does refugee sponsorship appeal to me, and how does it bring me joy? It appealed to me in the beginning because I felt there was so little effort required to change lives. I worked at Mosaic, which is a refugee settlement agency, for 4 years, and it was emotionally the hardest job I have ever done. Part of my job was filling out and submitting applications to Immigration Canada for refugees. I did hundreds of applications, and I learned what immigration required, so filling out the immigration forms was easy. But all day, I read their stories, and the stories were shocking. And I often wondered, why am I so blessed to live in Canada, where I have food, clean water, shelter, safety? So the least I could do was fill out applications and learn to do it well so it wasn't sent back to be filled out again. But the joy came when they arrived. I loved meeting newcomers at the airport. When they finally arrive in Canada, after years of losing hope, years of thinking they will remain forever in a foreign country where they have no rights, no future, probably don't speak the language, and their children can't go to school. Knowing that going back to their home country would probably mean persecution or death. And then they arrive in Canada, often to family members they haven't seen for years, and that they gave up hope of ever seeing again. And that is a joyous day. The major project I worked on was trying to bring young men from detention centers in Papua New Guinea and Manus, where the Australian government has been sending refugees since 2013 because they do not accept refugees in Australia. The government would allow them to go back to their own country, but most chose to stay because going back to their own country meant certain persecution. So they had been in detention for 8 years. And the first 10 young men arrived, and I got to know them, and I helped settle them in Port Coquitlam. And they were in their 20s and 30s and had been in detention for 8 years. And working with them brought me great joy, because I thought of my son, who's 25, and how awful it would be if he had to go through something like that. Helping them to settle in Canada and to build a future And to see that there was hope was wonderful. And I love these guys. They've all been through so much that they maintain a sense of humor, and they're very, very motivated to get on with their lives. They feel they've been wasting 8 years sitting and wasting 8 years of their very young lives. And it was an honor to help them. And I've told you this before, but one of the moments that stands out to me during all my time at Mosaic is when a young man came into my office and I asked him, "What do you like the most about living in Canada?" And he looked at me and he leaned over and he said, "In Canada, there's peace every day." And I can't imagine living where there is the threat of bombs dropping on my head or getting shot in the street. And I feel I need to do what I can to help people who live like that. I believe we take peace for granted. We can bring peace to those who don't believe they will ever find it. So please think about your gifts. Do you have the gift to serve with love, to take on a ministry that may help the church or the community or the world? Come to the ministry fair, because God may want to draw your attention to something that he wants you to do. As Mother Teresa said, yesterday has gone. Tomorrow has not yet come. We have only today. Let us begin. Amen.